Welcome to the Stronger Than Steel podcast with your host, Austin Davidson and John Keir, talking Steelers all the time. Now, here's Austin and John.
Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Stronger Than Steel podcast. My name is John Keir, and joining me as always is my co-host, Austin Davidson.
Heyo.
It's Season 5, Episode 30. The Pittsburgh Steelers are now 10-0 for the first time in franchise history after blowing out the Jacksonville Jaguars by a score of 27-3. The Jaguars fall to 1-9 on the season. It wasn't pretty at times, but the Steelers used a similar formula to what they've been using all season long. Turnovers and pressure by the defense and on offense, spreading the ball around to a bunch of different weapons and putting up points on offense and converting when they have the chance, and that's exactly what it was. Again, a lot of work to be done in all areas. Mike Tomlin pointed after the game to the fact that the Steelers have a lot of work to do, saying that the only thing perfect about the Steelers is their record. So now the Steelers have upcoming a game against the Baltimore Ravens on Thanksgiving night as of this point. It'll be the nightcap on Thanksgiving. And the Steelers, because they were in control of this game late, were able to pull their starters a little bit early. So, it wasn't perfect, but a dominant win in the stat sheet and an opportunity for the Steelers starters to rest a bit on their way to an early Thursday game in Week 12.
Yeah, definitely needed it. It was really good to be able to rest the starters at the end of the game, especially with some of the injuries that happened. It's good to get ready for this big game because this is huge. The Steelers have the possibility to clinch a playoff berth this week, not regarding winning the division, but just being able to clinch the playoffs. Like, you could, even if the Steelers lost out and everything went for every other team, they could get the 7th seed no matter what. So, it was a good team win, and I mean, you can't really get much better than 27-3. It wasn't perfect, but Steelers were able to take control, and the defense never gave up points after the literal first drive of the game.
So let's start there real quick. The game starting out with the Jaguars putting together their best drive of the game right away, getting 3 points out of it, and the Steelers respond. Before even that, a pivotal point of the game, I thought one of those 5 key plays you like to circle was that attempted onside by Keelan Cole, the Jaguars wide receiver. Almost recovered, but Marcus Allen was able to come up with it, and I think if the Jaguars recover that, this game probably goes a lot differently.
Easily, yeah. That was a surprise, but I mean, the Jaguars are a one-win team that have lost each straight, so they're really going to be pulling out all the stops. They have nothing to lose, other than really nothing to lose. That's it. So, I mean, good for Marcus Allen to get that and stop the game from swinging, instead giving the Steelers a lot of momentum to start them. I believe they started at their own 49, but it might have been just at midfield.
They began that drive from the Jaguars' 46-yard line. So
wow,
they started.
It's further up than I thought.
They started in plus territory, and then Chris Boswell missed his first field goal in 25 straight attempts, which was a Steelers record. And you had the feeling that it was going to be an ugly game for the Steelers, but the defense pretty much locked it down after that. The Jaguars on the day finished with just 206 yards, and 52 of them came on that opening drive. They only put together one other drive, I believe, that had more than 50 yards, and it ended in an interception. So I guess why don't we start with the defense then? That first drive, the Jaguars had a number of successful plays. It was a 9-play drive. I think the first 5 of them were deemed successful plays. And James Robinson was getting some ground up the middle, but, the Steelers' defense tightened. And then beyond that, I think it was, it had a lot to do with the Steelers' defense doing its job. But I think above everything else, we just saw that Jake Luton is just not a very good quarterback, at least not today.
No, he really struggled. It's not even just like a hidden in the stats thing. Like, he was overthrowing guys. He threw, obviously, 4 interceptions, which you will see on the stat sheet. He had to finish with a QBR of 12.4 if you want to give him the extra 0.4. He did not have a good day, and he finished with a yards per completion less than 10. So not very good day for him. He was just really, really struggling, and he did not look calm under He didn't look calm in the pocket at all. There were certain throws where it's like he didn't have pressure on him and he like was throwing like he was under pressure and it was just like an overthrow.
So I think looking at the box score, you might say, oh, the Steelers only got 2 sacks. That's kind of disappointing. Yeah, I guess, but to be honest with you, I felt like most of the time when Luton dropped back, he was throwing it really quickly, but I think that he might have just been throwing it for the sake of getting rid of it. I think that, for better or for worse, he was just not going to hang on to the ball in this game, and it was mostly to his detriment.
Yeah, no. I think that I wish the Steelers got more sacks, but I understand why they didn't. He was really trying to get rid of that ball really fast. They game planned to try and get rid of the ball fast because of obviously the Steelers pass rush being really, really good. And I mean the Steelers still have got their quarterback hits in this. It's just he was getting off so fast that they weren't really able to get sacks. I mean the only one sack I'll say was missed was TJ Watt taking out Bud Dupree on a play later on where Dupree was likely going to get Luton, and Watt took too straight of an angle to Luton, who rolled out to his right, and then tripped up Dupree. That one could have been the third sack, but it is what it is.
Yeah, so James Robinson, the only experienced Jaguars running back when it comes to carrying the ball this year. Chris Thompson, as I mentioned in the preview episode, on injured reserve, had 7 carries this year. No other running back had carried the ball this year for them, and Robinson was the only guy to carry the ball for them on this day. He finished with a nice 17 for 73, but, I mean, most of those yards, I feel, came on that opening drive, and it just got to a point where the Jaguars were not able to, they were using him, but they weren't able to sustain drives long enough for it to matter. And looking at the third down efficiency, they finished just 4 of 13. So, I mean, just overall, before you even get to the turnovers, just 3 points allowed and the 206 yards is great. And then you factor in the 4 turnovers, and that was really just the icing on top of the cake. So, I mean, you want to start going position by position? Because, I mean, there were a lot of guys that played in this game because I think the Steelers, looking ahead to Thursday, the coaching staff decided to rotate in some guys, keep players fresh a little more this week.
Yeah, sure. We can go position by position.
So starting with the defensive line, like the front, I thought just another dominant game from the likes of Cam Hayward and especially Stephon Tuitt, who I think has emerged as the best interior defensive lineman on this team, believe it or not. I thought he had a great game. And Tyson Alualu emerging in his quote-unquote revenge game as a starter this time, deflecting a pass near the goal line that Minkah Fitzpatrick intercepted. That was probably the biggest defensive play of the game. The Jaguars were only down 7 points at that point late in the first half, and Alualu gets his big mitts up in the air and deflects that ball in the air long enough for Fitzpatrick to get underneath it.
Yeah, overall, the defensive line did really, really well in this game. And like you said, Tuitt was probably the best. Tuitt got a pass defense and then a sack on the very next play after a big pass defense. So he was big in this game. Cameron Hayward was big in this game. He was tied for the lead in tackles in this game. I mean, overall, the defensive line, and despite not getting the sacks, I felt like the pressure was there for the most part. I felt like they were getting solid pressure from the defensive line.
And I'm trying to get the snap counts here. I know that there were some in garbage time, but we saw Carlos Davis, Chris Wormley, and Henry Mondeau. All of them had 8+ snaps in this game, so they all were able to get onto the field for a little bit. Minkah Fitzpatrick led the defense with 54 total snaps, so they were not on the field a lot in this one.
Yeah, and Mondo even got a quarterback hit in his little time being on the field. So, I mean, good for him. But yeah, there wasn't a lot of defense to be played in this game. It's kind of wild. I think you sent me it on Twitter. Either I sent it to you or you sent it to me that the Steelers lead the league in quarterback hits by far, and they have not played anywhere close to most of the days. They're our average for defensive plays played, if that makes sense.
Yeah, just overall, they've been the most aggressive blitzing team this year, and they've been the best at generating pressure. So it's been a lethal combination all year long. And we saw another example of that in this past game. Second level, T.J. Watt and Bud Dupree had banner days again. I know no sacks on the stat sheet for Watt, but I feel like he hasn't had really a bad game yet this year. Besides maybe the Dallas game, and Dupree played really well too. obviously picking up another sack this year, and those guys are a great dynamic duo to have. And then as far as the inside backers go, with Vince Williams led the team in tackles, had another tackle for loss. I felt like Robert Spillane was caught out of position a couple times, but overall I thought he was okay. And Avery Williamson got to play 8 snaps in this one, including one snap that was not garbage time.
Yeah, man. It was pretty good getting the rotation in there, but the one thing, if you want to nitpick, the one thing you could say about the linebackers is Dupree should have had a pick 6 in this game. Dupree dropped it, and people were memeing on him saying that he took some lessons from Ike Taylor because he dropped what would have been a pick 6. But otherwise, not Smith at the end, I lost time, but I thought Alex Smith at the end was playing really well. He was a big reason that the Jaguars last 2 offensive plays were stopped. He was part of it. Both him and were in on the last 2 plays. I wanted to point out Highsmith's how he did.
Highsmith is having a really good year. He's emerged as the clear number 3 outside linebacker.
Yeah, which is unfortunate for Adaney, but I mean, Adaney's been finding his spot on special teams, and he's been really good there.
Everyone has a home. And then last but not least, in the defensive backfield, this is where the stars really came out to shine, and it came in the form of the Steelers' safeties. Of course, Minkah Fitzpatrick had 2 more interceptions, giving him 4 on the year, 1 shy of his 5 that he had last season, so he continues on his torrid pace after being kind of quiet through the first month and a half of the season. He's really picked it up with the turnovers again. I felt like he's been playing really well. So another nice bounce-back game from him. Or not bounce-back, but another nice game from him. But the real shocker was the fact that Terrell Edmunds not only had an interception in this game, but he had 2. And he, again, was very solid as a tackler. It looks like Edmunds might finally be turning the corner into possibly that really good safety that the Steelers saw when they took him with a first-round pick back in 2018. I know the first one was kind of a gimme, similar to his first career interception, but that second one was all talent, really.
And that's what they drafted Terrell Edmunds, was his athletic. And that second interception where he went up and got it, that picture of him up in the air is ridiculous. Doesn't even make sense how he came down with an interception from that, but he was able to tip it to himself and get it. And it was really good. It'd be amazing if Terrell Edmunds could have a career like Bud Dupree's, where, I mean, he was always kind of solid. You're teetering on how you felt about him, but then he turned it on for the last 2 or 3 years. I hope to see that with Terrell Edmunds. And maybe this is a turning point, because getting 2 picks in the game after not having one since 2018 is actually pretty incredible, and he really deserves credit, because he's been playing well other than not forcing turnovers or not getting turnovers. And it wasn't even that, man. He came in, I'm pretty sure, on Minkah Fitzpatrick's other pick. He came in blasting on the blitz on that.
That's correct.
I'm sorry, that was just an incompletion.
No, it was the tip pass, which was intercepted. He was blitzing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he came in like a rocket on that, too. So, I mean, I know it was Tyson Alualu that really ultimately forced it, but he was coming in on a play like in the Denver Broncos game where he finished the game off. So he's been playing really well. Quietly, he's not like the best guy on the team, but like he's still been playing really solid football for the Steelers. And him getting the turnovers in this game kind of elevates his game to where he can be like one of the top guys on this squad.
He's missed 1 tackle this year. That's like a 6% missed tackle rate. And this year, in terms of when he's been targeted, he's giving up just over 50% of completions, which is the best for of his career. Obviously, he's got the career high with interceptions. He's tied a career high in pass breakups with 6 games to go. Pretty much all around the board, he's improved his coverage. And as a tackler, he's gotten better each year. You don't expect a player who played as many snaps as he did through the first 2 years of his career to really break out the way that he has this year. And it has kind of been under the radar, but he's been big time for Pittsburgh, and they've really needed him. And I know it was against Jacksonville, but when you haven't had a turnover forced since the 3rd week of your rookie season, now deep into your 3rd season in the NFL, that's a big deal, especially when you know that people were making fun of him because his brother, who's a running back on the team, had an interception more recently than him. I'm sure that's something that he had been bothering him, so now that he's been able to get that monkey off his back, I'm curious to see if he can capitalize on it.
Yeah, I hope that going forward that he's able to just keep it up, because he would be a really great defender if he could just keep it all together. Because like you said, the run game, the tackling was already there. It was just about the forcing turnovers, and if he could keep this up, obviously not. I'm not expecting 2 interceptions a game from him, but if he could get a turnover more than once a year, he'd be a really, really great player.
So overall, great day from the defense. Great to see Mike Hilton back. He didn't play. I didn't think he played quite as many snaps as he has been throughout the season. But again, with the Thursday night game looming, I don't think they wanted to overextend him coming back. But it was good to see him. Joe Hayden did go out for a few plays, then came back briefly before game flow dictated he wasn't needed anymore. Justin Lane came in and replaced him on the outside. I thought Lane didn't cover himself with glory, but also wasn't a liability either.
Yeah, Lane wasn't bad. And also Sean Davis got some playing time at the end of this game.
Yeah,
tackle himself.
Kind of forgot that he was on the team. He's kind of disappeared from everyone's thoughts.
Yeah, well, you know what I was also impressed with thinking of this, though? James Pierre, his first tackle was so nice. He is hard for a cornerback. He seems really cool. He might be a guy that we see more next year after the departure of Cameron Sutton and Mike Hilton, unless the team is able to keep one. But, yeah, James Pierre looks kind of dope. I'm kind of excited to see him going forward.
Yeah, for a guy that hadn't played any any defensive snaps until a couple weeks ago, it's nice these guys have gotten like back-to-back weeks where they've been able to get some garbage time action.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. You're pretty cool to be able to evaluate what you have on the roster, and you're able to sit your starters.
All right, let's go back now to the offensive side of the ball. Kind of a clunky game to start, and I know we were kind of going back and forth with this on Twitter. I really felt like the Steelers' offense was kind of getting in its own way early on. That's not to say that they didn't produce. They had an opportunity for points, missed a field goal, and then after a punt on their second drive, they scored 10 points on back-to-back possession, or actually they scored on their next 3 possessions to make it 17-3. But I just felt like the offense was, throughout the game, they did a lot of good things, but they also did a lot of things that were just kind of puzzling.
Yeah, for example, like the interception to end the half, the Steelers were in good position to take a 20-3 lead, which obviously now that we know what doesn't really matter, but they were in good position to take a 20-3 lead, 17-point game. But Ben Roethlisberger makes a questionable 50-50 call, which you shouldn't make when you're guaranteed. Well, I guess you're not guaranteed 3 points since Oswald missed a kick in this game. But who would rather take the chances on the field goal and go up to 17 points rather than going for a 50-50 ball on the zone? James Washington gets pushed off his route, which you don't want to see, and then the ball gets easily intercepted because James Washington is pushed off the route. That was getting in your own way. The Steelers could have easily settled for a field goal there instead and up 20-3, which, I mean, granted, it didn't matter in the end, but it was a poor choice at the time.
It felt eerily similar to that interception he threw against the Titans earlier in the season. I forget the exact score at that time. I think it was 24-7. But looking at this particular situation, all you needed was 3 points in order to go up by 3 scores, and I thought that would have been huge. And like you said, it didn't matter, so it was okay, but I felt like it was an unnecessary risk to take right there. So I wasn't happy necessarily with that. And then there were times I felt like I don't know, I guess maybe this is a kind of a general discussion we can have about the Steelers' rushing attack this year. You know, I hate the runs from the shotgun comparatively to under center. Now, I will say that I understand this team's identity is now spread it out and pick defenses apart, and they shouldn't stray away from that too much. But, I mean, we need to have a real conversation about these 2nd down and 10 runs, these 2nd and long runs, which are basically wasted plays that kill drives, and these plays that are predictable where you're bringing in an extra offensive lineman to play. Like when you bring Gerald Hawkins into play, the Steelers are basically telegraphing a run to the opposing team. And I think that we've seen that the running game anyways is a little too predictable.
Yeah, it's very predictable. I feel like in a lot of situations, how do I put this? They don't run when they should, and they run a lot when they shouldn't. I pointed out on Twitter, I forget exactly what drive it was on, but it was the 2nd and 1, and I was like, yeah, so this is a drive that this is a spot where they should run from, and they're going to try throwing it. And I said, just watch, and it's exactly what they did, and it was an incomplete pass, and then they were forced into a 3rd and 1. I'm pretty sure they ran it and got it on the next play, but it's like, I'm expecting a throw on 2nd and 1 because, yeah, it's a good shot downfield and so on and so forth, because it's kind of like the predictable thing to do. So I'd rather run and get the first down, and so I knew they wouldn't do that. They do it a lot, and then you see them running on 2nd and 10, 2nd and 12, 1st and 15 when you get a penalty. They love to run on downs like that, and it's terrible. It doesn't work. It's if you look at the successful run rate for the Steelers on 2nd and long or 1st and long, like 1st and 15, it's terrible. Like in this game, I'm pretty sure every time they ran on like 2nd and long, or it was 1 yard. Like I don't think they had a successful run on 2nd and long in this game. I'm fairly confident on that. It just doesn't work. The only run that I was like semi okay with was early on in the game where they ran a draw instead. That is the only kind of run I ever want to run on a 2nd and long, and I don't want to do it. It's like begrudgingly, like if you know that they're in man and they're just sold on man and they don't even have that many people on the line, go for a draw, fine, whatever. But like other than that, it's just like I don't ever want to see a run on 2nd and long. It's a passing down to me. It doesn't matter unless literally two. And I don't if my research suggesting when a defense is in man, typically the defensive backs are going to have their back to the quarterback because they're running with their guys. So they're not going to be looking out for the run. They're going to be with their wide receiver. So it's better to run on those. It's better to run against man sometimes because you have guys turned around and not looking at the ball because they're trying to cover a wide receiver.
So I'm trying to tally up the 2nd and long runs from this game. The first one, a 2nd and 10 late in the first quarter. Benny Snell up the middle on a 2nd and 10 for 3 yards. Second one, a 2nd and 10. Sorry, a 2nd and 9. Anthony Mcfarlane up the middle for 1 yard on a 2nd and 8. Those are the ones I have in the first half. First drive of the third quarter, 2nd and 12, Anthony Mcfarlane up the middle for 1 yard on a 2nd and 12. So far, we're 0-4 as far as successful runs on 2nd and long. Yeah, I mean, basically all these drives are ending in punts because the Steelers are putting themselves in horrible position.
Yeah. It's terrible. They're killing drives, and I don't know what the accuracy, I don't know what Randy Fichtner sees. It's just not working at all.
And then the last one, third to last drive of the game, Steelers' last touchdown drive after the final interception, a 2nd and 7, James Conner up the middle for -1 yard. So what was that? I think 5. We had 5 of those.
Yeah, that was awful.
Now, this one ended in a touchdown drive. And I want to point out that for all the misgivings I give, Ben Roethlisberger almost never attempts play action, and he certainly doesn't do it from under center. Well, he did for the Steelers' final touchdown, a passing touchdown to Eric Ebron. I was very happy to see that, and I'm hoping that that play results in more use of it down the road here.
Yeah, there was a lot of wild stuff that happened in this game. So, a lot of things that you wouldn't have expected to happen in this game. I mean, the only thing we were basically missing was the quarterback the sneak on the 4th and 1. was the one thing we were missing of things you don't expect the offensive team to do, like including the Terrell Edmonds interception. Kind of interesting game.
Let's start with the running game then. With the Steelers, it's been an awful point of attack the last few weeks. This week they go over 100 yards finally, 106 on the day. They did have 20 average only 3.9, but you have to take away the 3 Mason Rudolph kneel downs. And when you do that, they average about 4.5 yards per carry. James Conner with an explosive run and 89 yards on the day. Benny Snell only 15 yards on 7 totes, but he's been the short yardage back most of the year, and he had another touchdown in this one. So really, I felt like the only disappointing runner was Anthony Mcfarlane. He had 3 carries for 3 yards, and it seems like he's struggling to find a place in this offense.
Yeah, there's just his 3 runs. It just looks like there's some open area, and he just gets tackled. He's got to learn to break the arm tackles. I felt like he stopped pretty easily, but he has a lot of open space. You just got to learn to break those arm tackles.
So, I mean, overall in the day, I felt like the running backs did a really good job finding some space, and I know that not all the runs were great, but I felt like most of them were good. It was a huge step up, and then the offensive line had a really nice bounce-back game, their best game since the Titans game in terms of pushing people around. I still feel like there's a decent way to go to improve this ground game, and they will have darker days against better teams, but this was definitely an encouraging sign and finally a step in the right direction.
A historic game, too. It's the first time in Steelers history that the Steelers haven't allowed a sack in 3 straight games. So honestly, it was really good performance. I thought that the run blocking was better in this game. It was kind of against a lesser opponent, so I just want to see them improve against a little bit better competition. But still, I thought they did pretty well.
Let's now transition to the passing game. Obviously, let's stay with the offensive line since we were talking about them. Again, you just mentioned it, 3 straight games without a sack, best in team history. I felt like Roethlisberger really wasn't pressured in this one either. Just another great game from these guys. For all the struggles they've had on the ground, this pass blocking unit has been one of the best in the game, and Ben Roethlisberger's been getting the ball out faster than any other quarterback, so it's been almost impossible to get hits and sacks on him this year.
Yeah, he's been getting it out so quick, and it's kind of crazy and ridiculous comparing him to how fast other quarterbacks are getting it out. He's got like 0.3 of a second. He's getting out 0.3 of a second faster than the next closest guys, so he is really getting it out fast, and it's working for him. It's helping. I mean, the whole game plan going into this game apparently was just throw it to Deontay Johnson and let him work. That's basically what it was. Ben finished with under 10 yards per completion, which typically is not very, very good for a quarterback. It's usually dink and dunk style, but I mean here, and it was a lot. John Weeks in this game got 12 catches for 111 yards, including a circus catch on the 1 yard line, which was really, really good ball location on that. Johnson frustrates you at times, but then he's going to do a catch like that. It's just, he's an interesting player. Really, really good player. He had his second straight 100 game following his first 100-yard game last week. He played really well in this game with Ben really focusing on him here.
Yeah, the passing game was really the bread and butter as it has been all year. I really feel like the big difference with the passing numbers are those deep completions that we're still looking for from Ben. He did hit on one, though. He hit on a handful, but the big one was the deep ball to Chase Claypool down the right sideline. Beautiful throw and catch from Ben to the rookie Claypool, who now, I believe, tied an NFL record with 10 touchdowns in 10 games for a rookie. That's certainly the most in the modern era. And Claypool is off and running as a potential star in this league. And Johnson, again, was the bread and butter of the offense, catching and converting all day long. Prior to being pulled out for backups, Deontay Johnson at one point had more receptions than Jake Luton had completions. That was a pretty interesting stat.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy. He was straight up ball, and he was targeted the same amount of times that Luton completed balls. I mean, kind of crazy. He was having a really, really good day, Johnson. Just topped off by that circus catch.
I've been saying for a little while now, Johnson kind of feels like a young, less polished version of what Antonio Brown was when he was a young player, and it's pretty nice to see, and I think it's partially why Roethlisberger feels so comfortable with him. You know he trusts him when Johnson is coming out of his break and the ball's already coming his way. That requires trust and timing that they work on a lot behind the scenes.
Yeah, the connection is definitely growing. I know it's been the talks around town have been about Chase Claypool, and Chase Claypool is great in his own respect. But Deontay Johnson is kind of a quiet. He's not known really. He's still kept out of the wide receiver conversation when people talk about the wide receivers from last year's draft. People still, and it's kind of understandable. DK is a freak. AJ Brown is really good, and Terry McLaurin is really good as well. But Deontay Johnson, I feel like, doesn't get the respect that he should. I don't really know why. I guess because he was hurt, but I feel like he never gets any attention.
Definitely, indeed. Looking at the rest of the pass catchers, Eric Ebron had a solid day, 4 for 36 in the clinching touchdown. He's been a really solid addition for the offense, and with Zach Gentry going down with a knee sprain, as it turns out, he was the only active tight end with Vance McDonald still on the COVID list at the time. Ebron, I thought, played pretty well in this game, running a nice 8 route on the game-sealing touchdown there. And Ray McLeod and Juju Smith-Schuster finished with a combined 8 catches for 39 yards. Not a ton of yardage, but they were both doing a good job in this game. James Washington, again, I feel like we're saying this every week, making his 1 catch of the day count. A big third down, I think it was a third down, a big conversion for the Steelers on a nice pass and catch. Toe drag swag, if you will. So the Steelers wide receiving core has done a really good job the last few weeks, and they've continued to shine brightly even when other guys aren't being featured.
Yeah, I mean, despite Deontay Johnson getting 12 receptions, the ball is spread pretty well. I mean, Chase, Eric, Ray, and Juju all had 4 catches each. So, I mean, the ball is still being spread around. And like you said, that ball of James Washington, that was an excellent throw by Ben and a great catch by James Washington. Everyone's contributing.
Last but not least, Ben himself, how do you think he played?
Well, I thought he wasn't making many mistakes. I thought he did decently. The interception was a bad decision, but I understand. It was sort of like the Tennessee game where it's like the interception was a bad decision, but like you understand. You want to get James Washington, if he doesn't get thrown off his route, that's not as bad of an interception. Likely James Washington ends up in front of that ball and at least has a shot for it, and it's probably not picked off. But overall, I thought he did really well. Relied a lot on the dunk, which again is why his yards per completion is under 10. But still, I thought he had a decent day. How about you?
Yeah, just a couple other, a handful of throws that he missed and a couple bad decisions. One which I remember seeing you tweet was a kind of a floater over the middle on a screen pass that probably could have been picked off, and one throw that he kind of improperly read where he led the receiver to a spot where a defender could have jumped the route. But even with those couple of throws, I felt like he played very well for the most part. And I think he's continuing to have a really solid year, very different from what we're used to seeing with him. But overall in the season, I think he's had a really solid year. And I know he's not going to garner a ton of MVP consideration, but I think that as long as he keeps doing what he's doing, there's no reason for him to play differently until he has to.
Yeah, I mean, if he keeps playing like he has, if he keeps the interceptions as low as they are, he could possibly surpass Russell Wilson in terms of that, which is kind of crazy to say because Russell Wilson just hasn't been playing as great as he was. It seems like now the consensus MVP is Patrick Mahomes because Josh Allen, Russell Wilson, and Aaron Rodgers have all kind of slowed down, and then there's just Patrick Mahomes who just has 1 interception, is playing at such a high level. But I feel like Ben could just be right behind those guys now.
And at 10-0, the Steelers are rolling. Last but not least, let's check the special teams now. And Jordan Berry again had a very good game. aside from that horrific stretch at the end of last season, the last 2 years for Barry have actually been very good. He hasn't been elite, but he's been a lot closer to what you want out of your starting, your punter, as opposed to what we saw from Barry for the first 3.5 years of his career.
Yeah, he didn't do bad. He had a long 55. It was a nice punt. He got 2 inside the 20. There was one punt on a short field kick. I'm sorry, where I thought maybe he could have gotten a little bit farther, but I mean he still got it at the 9 at the time I'm referencing, so I can't really complain. But overall, I think that Barry's been pretty solid this year, and I guess the move to Colquitt was a good one so far.
The kick missed by Boswell was most likely due to a bad snap from long snapper Cameron Canaday. He's had a handful of them this year. He's been bailed out by both Colquitt and Barry on holds this year. Are you getting concerned about him?
I'm a little. I don't get to think of a point call that Hall of Fame penalty.
Sorry about that. We lost. We had some technical difficulties there, Austin. You mind repeating what you said?
I was just memeing. I said, worst comes to worst, we have Hall of Fame long snapper Colin Holba, free agency still if we need him.
Holba most recently played for who?
I think Jaguars. I think it's either Jaguars or Giants.
Let's see. I'm kind of curious. He was most recently with the Giants last year. Alrighty. So we'll keep our eye on that. Closing thoughts on this game?
Steelers are 10-0. It's great to be alive. It's great to be a Steelers fan, and I mean, next week the Steelers have a playoff clinching scenario ahead of them, so all is well coming out of this game.
What do you think about the 16-0 stuff?
I don't like to think about it. It gives me agita. I pretend that we're 0-0 every week. Every week we're 0-0, and then it's erased after the game, whatever happens.
Would you almost rather the Steelers went in with 15-1, 14-2 record into the playoffs?
No. It does sound like it takes off some pressure, but I'd rather go in there with knowing that the team hasn't lost at all. I'd rather go in undefeated.
Honestly, I think the idea is that there's pressure there, and I think this team knows that they have to most likely beat Kansas City to get to the Super Bowl. And if they play Kansas City, I don't know if it matters if they're going to be undefeated. I don't think they're going to be favored in that game.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And we're gonna have to see. We're gonna see if we beat the Bills or Colts first, because the Colts are a really good team. Colts are a better team than I was really factoring in after seeing them beat Green Bay. And then the Bills had been a really solid team.
So why don't we transition into the week 11 games here then? Since we were talking about Kansas City, let's talk a little bit about that game that they played. They keep pace with the Steelers, just one game back of Pittsburgh for the first overall seed. Come from behind win for Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs against the Raiders in Vegas, 35-31. The Raiders played this one really well again, but the Chiefs were able to pull it out thanks to the Raiders completely blowing it on defense. I felt pretty good watching this game that the Raiders could pull this one out. For the Chiefs, I think it was a somewhat disappointing performance coming off the bye. I feel like they should have played better.
Yeah, the Chiefs have stereotypically played really well after the bye under Andy Reid, so that was surprising. And I mean, whenever the Raiders had the script to beat the Chiefs, I don't know what they do that's different, but they have it. I know they didn't win this game, but that was very close. I mean, the only problem was you left Patrick Mahomes a little bit too much time. You left him 1 minute and 30 seconds. You needed to leave him about 15 seconds for him not to make it down the field. But, that game was a really interesting game, and there was a little bit of a glimmer of hope for Steelers fans that we'd have a 2-game lead over Kansas City for first place, but it didn't manifest.
The what the Raiders have done is they stay on schedule with the ground game, and they are aggressive down the field. That's what I noticed. So take that for whatever it's worth. Let's circle back now. How about why don't we just proceed with the Monday night game that just ended? The Rams hold on for a 27-24 victory. The Brady-led Buccaneers look very very beatable right now.
Yeah, I'm also impressed with the Rams. I wasn't sure about the Rams because, like we said, they started 4-0 against the NFC with the Giants, Eagles, and stuff. And I didn't really know where to rank them. Then they came in and beat Seattle pretty nicely, and now they've come in and beat the Buccaneers. It wasn't like a blowout, but they beat them. And I didn't expect that. So I think the Rams might be a team considering. I'm not sure yet. Still not sold, but overall they did well in this game, and they were able to hold on to win with the pick against Brady on the last drive of the game, for the Rams defense anyway.
They lead the NFC West right now.
They also lead the NFC East if they were in that division and only counted the games that they played against the NFC East. That's my favorite stat. They're 4-0 in the NFC East. They would be in the top of that division.
If the Steelers played in the NFC East, they'd have clinched the division yesterday.
Oh, the NFC East is a joke. I love it.
We already talked about the Thursday night game. Speaking of, I guess, the NFC East, let's go with the Browns. The team now officially in second place in the AFC North at 7-3. They've played like all their home games in bad weather this year. The Eagles, not a great game for Carson Wentz again. He's really sputtering. The Browns rolling, but I don't know. What do you do if you're the Eagles? Are you trying to win the division at this point? Because you could make the argument that you'd rather not make the playoffs. What do you even do right now?
I really don't know. I feel like you got to play for the playoffs. Anything can happen, but it doesn't seem worth it. It feels like whatever team's going to get there is going to get smacked. They're going to get immediately smacked by whoever they have to verse in the first round. So it's going to be. I guess if it was me personally, I'm still playing to win that division because I just all I need is a chance, and the Eagles can, as much as I hate to say it, the Eagles can play better. Their team is better. They've dealt with a lot of injuries. Carson Wentz has got to play better. If Carson Wentz could return to some form that was better than anything that's happened this year, that team could be a better team and actually win a game or two. But at the moment, it's just they look terrible because of Carson Wentz mostly and injuries. But,
So, if you are Doug Peterson, are you going to bench Carson Wentz?
No. No, I'm going to still roll with Carson Wentz for a few more games, maybe a couple, maybe 2 more games. But I'm thinking about it already. You drafted a quarterback in the second round, people question you for it, and now it looks like it makes sense. Maybe it's time to see what Jalen Hurts has got.
See, I don't think your answers make sense, bud. I think if you're tanking, you keep playing Carson Wentz.
Yeah, I think you had to bet on Carson Wentz something changing, something snapping at some point.
A few weeks, or actually early in the year when he was playing badly still then, I thought it might not be a bad idea to sit him down for a couple games and kind of let him sort things out. And Jalen Hurts, I kind of compared to like a slightly more polished Tim Tebow. I don't know if it would win you any games, but I think sitting him down for a little bit and trying to see if you can light a spark with Jalen Hurts for a little bit might not be the worst way to go. And when that inevitably flames out in a handful of weeks, you can turn back to Wentz and maybe he'll have rebooted successfully. But I just don't see him working his way out of it while he's playing. He's had too much time to do so and has made no progress at all. And, stat I saw, he's leading the league in turnover-worthy plays by such a large margin where if he didn't have any the rest of the year, he'd still probably finish top 3 in terms of quarterbacks with turnover-worthy plays. Like, he is just handing the ball to the other team, and he did again another pick 6 this week against Cleveland. He's just killing he's killing this team.
He's not playing smart football, that's for sure. Maybe benching him would be helpful. Maybe it'll light a fire underneath him. I'm not sure. I don't know. I guess maybe Jalen Hurts could be the spark they need. I don't know.
Here's what I know. I know Carson Wentz is not as good as he was in 2017, but I also know this is not who he is either. He's not this bad. I think that the best way to get to him is to just kind of like what you do in baseball when you've got a hitter who's in the middle of a cold streak. You sit him down for a few days and just say, you know what, just clear your mind. And, if it's a weekend, you tell him to come back the start of next week and try again. I think that's got to be your approach if you're Doug Peterson.
Yeah, I guess so.
All right. Falcons at Saints. The Taysom Hill experiment went well enough in this one. Definitely a different Saints offense, but still able to move the ball enough. The Falcons didn't lose this game because of their defense, though. It was definitely their offense, which surprisingly enough completely crapped the bed.
Yeah, I mean, losing Julio Jones hurts, but I mean, they probably should have played better than that regardless. So, I mean, it is what it is. The Taysom Hill experiment went decently, as you said. I guess they're going to roll with Taysom Hill going forward.
Looked like it could have been a questionable decision with Jameis Winston always playing well against the Falcons, apparently not mattering to Sean Payton. But, here we are with the Buccaneers losing. The Saints are now 2 games ahead of the Buccaneers with a half game in hand because they swept them. Now the Saints can just kind of cruise and make sure that Taysom Hill doesn't screw things up.
Yeah. I mean, the Saints are in pretty good position. They should still be able to make the playoffs and finish actually with a solid seed even without Drew Brees.
Unfortunate news to report out of the Bengals and Washington football team game. Joe Burrow, the quarterback for the Bengals, the number 1 overall pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, has been lost for the season with a torn ACL, MCL, and slight knee structure damage to his left knee after taking a hit in that game. Really tough. You don't want to see stuff like that happen, and sadly, it was something that I think all football fans were fearing going into this season because even though Burrow was great, the offensive line was just horrific, and even though they took some steps to address it in the draft the last couple of years, it has just not been nearly good enough, and Burrow paid the price dearly this whole season and did again on this play.
Do you think he plays a single snap next year? I'm curious.
I think so. I think he'll be able to come.
You think he's returned next season?
I think he'll be able to.
I'm worried, man.
I mean,
I'm worried that he suffered a Bridgewater type injury.
I mean, it's still too early to tell. We're not going to know right away, but I think there's a chance he'll return next season.
I just think by the time that he gets back, it might not even be. It might not even be. Their season could already be over. It's just that's because it's like what, a 9 to 12 month recovery time normally, and then they said that there's extra structural damage. So even if he comes back in say 9 months, I guess I would put him at being able to get back for the season. I'll have to see. It really depends on that timetable. I worry that there's going to be more towards a year, and if it's literally a year, you're thinking he's getting back around like week 9, week 10. I think the Bengals are going to be relevant at that point. I mean, every year is a throw up, but to me, it's just, I feel like throwing him in next year might be, depending on how early he can get back, it might just be useless. It might just be throwing him into fire for no reason.
We can always put him on the PUP list to start the year. That gives you 6 weeks right there, if you want.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
So
I just think that I feel like the Bengals are going to be irrelevant by the time he gets back.
Well, if history is any indication, that will likely be the case. They are stuck with Ryan Finley now at quarterback. Moving on to the Lions and Panthers. This was a 20-0 blanking for the Panthers. P.J. Walker, the XFL legend, played well in relief of Teddy Bridgewater, who was injured. The Lions at 4-6 pretty much need to win out. Otherwise, I think Matt Patricia is gone at the end of the year.
Yeah, this was an awful game. I thought that the Panthers were going to win regardless, just because I know that the Lions are really, really bad. But this was worse than I imagined. This was really, really bad. The Panthers didn't have a stop last week against Tampa Bay. Like they didn't stop them at all, and then they were able to blank the Lions. telling, and I understand that Matt Stafford was banged up. There's no Kenny Galladay, no Danny Amendola, but you still got Marvin Jones, you still got T.J. Hawkins, and you gotta make something work. You got Kerryon Johnson, you have DeAndre Swift. Like, you still have weapons there. I don't know. I was kind of taken back by how bad the Lions were in this game.
So where are you on Stafford in general with the Lions? Do you think it could be time for a change?
It's time for the Lions to blow it up. The Lions haven't done anything in years. Even when they made the playoffs, they weren't doing anything. It is time for them to blow it up and rebuild. They've been avoiding it for way too long for a team that hasn't done anything meaningful in years.
Stafford has 2 years remaining on his contract. There's a potential out in 2021. There's $24 million in dead cap, so I think they probably hang on to him one more year. But I'm starting to think, because you're talking about a new regime likely coming in, and even though I think he's capable of playing better, the fact of the matter is that there's only so many times you can reboot. And this team's been rebooting constantly over his entire career. The guy hasn't had any luck.
Yeah, no, the team's just been bad, but they need to do a full one. They need to do what the Miami Dolphins did. They need to blow it up, get rid of anything that's an asset, start from scratch, and work from there. Then they need to do, because the Dolphins did it perfectly. Dolphins blew it up, and they're actually in a solid position already a year after blowing it up. And I feel, and next year it's not even over. Next year they still got more draft picks to work with, and they have more cap space to work with. That's what the Lions need to do. Lions just need to start all over, like a real one though, not like halfway. Not like, okay, we're gonna keep this quarterback, we're gonna keep Stafford. No, you got everyone. Anyone that's worth value, get rid of them.
While the Steelers were resting starters as they were deep into the game against the Jaguars, the Ravens were stuck going to overtime with Derrick Henry and the Titans. Henry and the Titans prevail in overtime with a nice long run from Derrick Henry. The Ravens have dropped three of their last 4 games here, and they're in a free fall. The Titans, after struggling a bit, losing a handful of games recently, are back on the winning track here, and the Ravens now fall to 3rd place in the division. There have been talks about the Ravens' offense and how much it's struggling. They're in a lot of trouble. The running game hasn't been as good. There have been injuries to Nick Boyle, Ronnie Stanley, Marshall Yanda retired. And then on the outside, the receivers haven't been that good. And, there's just a lot going on with the injuries and retirements, let alone the actual play of the players.
Yeah, the Ravens are not in a good spot right now. You could say their back's against the wall. If the playoffs were to start today, they would be out of the playoff picture. That's how bad it is. And that's in a 17 playoff scenario. So they are really, really in bad shape. Going to Thursday, it doesn't help. Like, they are going on a short week after a long game against a team that had a somewhat shorter game because they were able to rest starters. So the Ravens had their back against the wall coming into Thursday. They're going to be playing a team fighting for their playoff life, because not that a loss knocks them out of the playoffs. Tons of things could happen. They could still secure that 7th seed or 6th seed pretty easily, but losing again, that would be tough for a team that's free-falled so hard the past couple of weeks.
Well, not that they had much of a chance to win the division anyways, but, it will officially end their chance of winning the division. So you're talking best-case scenario, the number 5 seed. Best-case scenario. And even then, you'll be looking up at Tennessee/Indy, Cleveland, possibly Miami. So it's just a whole world of hurt.
Yeah, because then you're 2 games behind Cleveland, too, if you lose, assuming Cleveland wins next week.
Kind of under the radar, good game. Patriots at Houston. Deshaun Watson plays well, outdueling Cam Newton, and the Texans pull out a victory late in the game. I didn't see anything.
Yeah. I didn't get to really watch any of that game. I wasn't really very interested. Both teams are pretty boring to me.
I didn't see anything really of it either. I did see a good bit of Dolphins-Broncos. We failed to take into account with our picks the thin air in Denver. The Broncos defense came crashing down on Tua Tagovailoa. Brian Flores benched him due to ineffectiveness, and I'm assuming fear of possibly him getting hurt, in favor of Ryan Fitzpatrick late in the game. Fitzpatrick drove the Dolphins down to the goal line with the chance to possibly tie it, but got picked off by Justin Simmons. Disappointing loss for the Broncos, who, Drew Lock, again, not a great day, but kind of probably the surprise upset of the week, at least in the AFC.
Thank God I did not put money on this game. I was so close. The only reason I didn't put $125 on this game is because my buddy didn't wake up. It was a blessing because I really was so confident in the Dolphins coming in and so low on the Broncos. Because Drew Lock is bad. He's bad. He threw a pick so early on in the game and it was bad. That's all I could say. I was surprised with the outcome, and I don't know about benching Tua. I thought that was an odd decision, and I'm not sure it sends the message it's supposed to. But I mean, maybe maybe there's something to it. I'm not sure. I thought that's a mistake. Like right after, if you named him your starter, make him your starter. I don't know. To me, that was odd.
Flores has made some odd decisions, like benching Ryan Fitzpatrick when he's playing his best ball of the season, too. So, I mean, whatever you say, it has worked for them generally this year. So, I guess, all's fair.
For sure.
Bad, though, describes the New York Jets, who have matched the Steelers' record in terms of a 0-10, except the records are flipped. The Jets remain imperfect, losing 34-28. They had a chance to possibly tie this game late, though. Even with a horribly conservative start to the game, the Jets were in it late and had a chance to win, but were unable to score late, and the Chargers hung on for their third win of the year. The Jets lost probably their last best chance to win a game, but obviously they still have 6 cracks at it. They play Miami, Vegas, Seattle, the Rams, Browns, and Patriots, so it could very well be that season finale against the Patriots where the Jets have their last opportunity. I'm starting to think that Joe Flacco might fare better than Sam Darnold, just because of the fact that I think Flacco, as immobile as he is, at least understands the defenses better than Darnold does. And with the playmakers coming back for the Jets, I feel like that might give them their best chance.
I really thought that Flacco coming in might actually give the Jets a win. Back when it first happened, I was like, not that I thought Flacco was good, it's just I thought he was honestly probably better than Sam Darnold, and then second of all, a change of pace that maybe teams weren't going to be ready for this year. So I still agree, though. I think Flacco is actually better than Darnold, which is unfortunate to say. That's just how I see it, though.
I mean, this year he's not putting up great numbers at all, but you have to remember he's playing with the worst team in the league, and he's got all these sorts of ailments that he's dealt with throughout the season and his career, really. But this year, 6 touchdowns, 3 picks. The picks have been untimely, though. I feel like he's been playing all right. So, I mean, I guess the Jets, you need to ask yourselves, are you really trying to end up with pick number 1? Because with Jacksonville still lurking just a game behind or ahead, if you will, I guess maybe that's something you want to stick with. I don't know. I still think I'm still kind of clinging to this possibility that the Jets are going to somehow stumble into one, just because I just think it's hard to do. But the fact of the matter is, after there was only one winless team in the modern era from 1970 all the way to 2007, there's a chance we could have 3 in 12 years.
Yeah, kind of crazy. A lot of incompetency on front offices. I don't blame a lot of Jets players. I blame the front office of the Jets for a lot of it, but they were working on it by hiring Joe Douglas, so,
Let's move on to the biggest, let's move to the Cowboys and Vikings. The biggest upset of the week in the NFC. Kirk Cousins finished with a good stat line, but the story was the Cowboys and Andy Dalton coming up with a big win. coming off the bye, one that they desperately needed to keep pace in the NFC East, or least, if you will. Actually, probably the biggest storyline coming out of this game, though, besides the two amazing touchdown grabs by CeeDee Lamb and Adam Thielen, was that Thielen tested positive for COVID after the game.
Yeah, that's tough. That's like the Vikings' best player, too. So it's tough. I mean, this is good. Honestly, losing for the Vikings is probably a good thing. They're not going anywhere this year, so probably best to try and get a high draft pick and hope that you could possibly compete for a quarterback if you like one. Because, I'm sorry, Kirk Cousins isn't it. I don't know how you move on from that contract, but he's not. They guaranteed all his money, basically. I know they changed his contract this year a little bit, but it's still, I don't know, man. They need a new quarterback.
If they had won that game, they'd have been 5-5, just a couple games out of the playoffs. So even though it would have been still really unlikely, they might have still tried to cling to that. Their point differential is only -14, but you know, when Dalvin Cook isn't getting going, they're just not doing anything.
Yeah, Dalvin Cook is that entire offense. Dalvin Cook and Adam Thielen. Kirk Cousins ain't part of it. He's trash.
Well,
pretend he's not throwing Adam Thielen the ball.
Sprinkle Justin Jefferson in there too. He's been really good.
Yeah, Justin Jefferson's been
not in this game though. He was quiet this day.
Yeah.
Just 3 for 86. All right, and last game we have Packers and Colts. This was a really exciting one. The Packers got up big early, and then the Colts rallied back. A fumble by Marquez Valdez-Scantling led to the Colts getting the ball in overtime and kicking the game winner. The Colts are no joke. This was a pretty good tilt between two teams. The Packers, I'm not sure that anything's going to change my thoughts on them unless if we see them in the playoffs. The Colts, as long as Phillip Rivers isn't throwing the game away, they're a really solid team.
Yeah, this game surprised me. It was really that fumble by Marcus Valdez-Scantling that changed it. But, the Colts still surprised me. I didn't think that they'd be able to compete. They were down big at some point. I'm pretty sure they were down 13 points at one point. But they were just able to keep coming back. And what concerns me with the Packers is their run defense. Their run defense is so bad. So bad. They rank like all the way at last in the league in run defense. And that's bad when you're a team that's been up a lot. Usually, if you're a team that loses a lot and stuff, like your run defense on the statistically wise is worse because teams tend to run on you a lot at the end of the game. No, they're just bad all game against the run, which is kind of wild. I was hoping with Christian Kirksey back they'd be better, but they were not in this game. They were not better against the run.
So wrapping things up here, just a couple things to get to. Number one, several injuries to talk about for the Steelers. Obviously, Zach Gentry is on injured reserve. He sprained his knee. Was thought to be much worse than it originally, but luckily it seems like he avoided massively major knee injury there. Vance McDonald is off the COVID list now, so he can return to practice now. I would imagine the Steelers make some sort of move with the tight end, though, with Gentry now gone. So it's probably going to be either Kevin Rader or they're going to bring someone in off the street. We'll see. Juju Smith-Schuster re-aggravated an injury. It was either his ankle or his foot. I guess it was his foot. He stepped on an official's flag that was thrown in the field of play inadvertently. So we'll see what's going to go on with him. He probably could play, I would imagine, but on the short week, it's more of a question mark now. Joe Hayden had a knee injury, came out for a few plays, went back in, and then was pulled out with the rest of the starters. So we'll keep an eye out on him as well. Trey Edmonds, Jalen Samuels, and Jaron Elliott all missed the game on Sunday and were all expected to not practice on Monday today. So we'll see about them as well. And then on the other side for the Ravens, the big news, they had several players, I guess at least two players, Mark Ingram and J.K. Dobbins, two running backs that tested positive for COVID. Nose tackle Brandon Williams was identified as a high-risk contact. None of these players will be able to play on Thursday, and they were already missing Calais Campbell too. So this Ravens team, desperate for a win, is now even more shorthanded.
It's cool. They still have their best running back on the roster in Lamar Jackson. It's cool.
Well,
but seriously, not to meme. Yeah, no, that was an awful loss for them. Brandon Williams might not be, because Brandon Williams might have not played regardless. Brandon Williams had an ankle injury that kept him out of this past game, so that he might have not been playing regardless. But I guess at least it makes it 100% that he's not playing. It's gonna be interesting to see tomorrow if the Ravens have any more positive tests. Just because you're not a high risk contact does not mean you can't get it. So we'll have to see if the Ravens have any more test, but this is awful for them on a short week after playing a long game going into overtime against a team that basically shortened their week. They're in trouble. I know their backs against the wall, but just early on for the preview, I don't know. I can pick the Ravens to win this one, even with their backs against the wall. With how they played last time against the Steelers, and now Steelers have Tyson Alualu back and Mike Hilton back. That's a tough one. This is a tough one. That their running game is worse, and we got our run defense better. It's just, I don't know.
Well, we'll be back later in the week to preview Steelers-Ravens Part 2. In the meantime, if you have any questions about the show, please feel free to email us at strongerthansteelpodcast@gmail.com. Check out our website, strongerthansteelnfl.blogspot.com. In addition to our YouTube and SoundCloud pages under the name Stronger Than Steel Podcast, check out our episodes. And we're on social media. Check out our Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Until next time, thank you as always for listening to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. Take care.
Bye.
You have been listening to Stronger Than Steel podcast. Thank you for joining us today, and don't forget to check out our website listed in the description below.